Hello everyone and welcome to Gyandoot 2.0 program, the initiative of Commissionerate College Education Rajasthan. Today's topic for discussion is The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, a poem written by S.T. Coleridge. In this video, I shall discuss the summary part of part 1 and 2 of the poem. My name is Bharti Singh Arya and I am Assistant Professor in the Department of English. Before we begin, let us have an introduction to the author, Samuel Taylor Coleridge, who was born on 21st October 1772. He was an English poet, literary critic, philosopher, and a theologian who, with his friend William Wordsworth, was the founder of the Romantic movement in England and a member of the Lake Poets. A theologian means a person who studies the nature of God, religion, or religious beliefs. And being a member of the Lake Poets, so the Lake Poets were a group of poets who all lived in the Lake District of England in the first half of the 19th century. Coleridge shared volumes and collaborated with Charles Lamb, Robert Southey, and Charles Lloyd. He wrote the poems The Rime of the Ancient Mariner and Kubla Khan, as well as the major prose work by the name Biographia Literaria. His acknowledged critical work, especially on William Shakespeare, was highly influential, and he helped introduce German idealist philosophy to the English-speaking culture. Coleridge has also coined many familiar words and phrases, which includes suspension of disbelief, a very famous popular phrase, suspension of disbelief, which describes unofficial contract that we enter into when we read or watch fictional narratives. He had a major influence on Ralph Waldo Emerson and the American Transcendentalism. About the poem, The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, it is the most significant, longest, and celebrated poems of Coleridge. In fact, it's Coleridge's greatest poems that caused a sea change in the English verse. It was written between 1797 and 1798 and was published in the first edition of the Lyrical Ballads. Now, the Lyrical Ballads was a cooperative venture between Coleridge and his friend William Wordsworth. They compiled it with the intention of conveying natural thoughts with natural diction, which was very much against the poetry of sensibility of that time. In fact, these poems launched Romanticism in literature, a movement that is still so forcefully felt today. The poem is written in the flowing ballad meter, and it is an enduring enigma of moral philosophy. It is marked by plainness of phrasing, the starkness of imagery, and the clarity of narrative. It also ranges in literary fields from travel books to medieval sea stories, from classical myths to Christian ritualism. Ever since the first publication of the Lyrical Ballads, the Rime of the Ancient Mariner has been a poem which could not be ignored. It is packed with Gothic elements like the strange and frightening weather, the albatross as a bird of good omen, and the madness and deaths of the crew members. Coleridge, in his Biographia Literaria, gave an interesting account of the origin of the scheme of the lyrical ballads, to which the rhyme of the ancient mariner constituted his major contribution. He wrote the poem, it appears, as an example of that type of poetry in which the supernatural is presented in such a manner as to become acceptable. He doesn't invent wonders or gruesome horrors, but he makes the supernatural a psychic phenomena, symbolizing the mystery of life. Now, the idea of killing an albatross, bringing bad luck upon the crew of a ship, appears to have been invented in the poem, as there is no precedent for it. And the idea of the albatross was probably Wordsworth's. It was not Coleridge's idea. Despite the successful working partnership and their friendship, during the years of the lyrical ballads, the two poets later became estranged from each other, especially as Wordsworth became a more conservative in life in his later years. Let us start with the summary of the first part of the poem. It is an ancient mariner, and he stoppeth one of thee by the long grey beard and glittering eye. Now wherefrom stoppest thou me? The bridegroom's doors are opened wide, and I am next of kin. The guests are met, the feast is set. Mayst hear the merry din. The ancient mariner with long grey beard and glittering eye and a skinny hand detains one of the three gallants hurrying to a wedding feast. The guest protested that he was the nearest relation of the bridegroom and anxious that the other guests had all arrived and he must be awaited. He holds him with his skinny hand. There was a ship, quoth he. Hold off, unhand me, greybeard loon. Eftsoons his hand dropped he. He holds him with his glittering eye. The wedding guest stood still and listens like a 3 years child. The mariner hath his will. The wedding guest sat on a stone. He cannot choose but hear, and thus spake on the ancient man, the bright-eyed mariner. The guest demanded that the mariner should let go of his hand. Then suddenly the hand of the mariner dropped. But the wedding guest was dismayed to find that he still could not move away, as the mariner held him spellbound with his glittering eyes. The ancient mariner held the wedding guest as helplessly under his will as one might do a child only 3 years old. He sat on a stone to hear the ancient mariner's story, for he realized that he had no power of going away without hearing his story. The ship was sheered, the harbour cleared. Merrily did we drop, below the kirk, below the hill, below the lighthouse top. The sun came up upon the left, out of the sea came he, and he shone bright, and on the right went down into the sea. higher and higher every day till over the mast at noon. The wedding guest here beat his breast, for he heard the loud bassoon. Then the ancient mariner began to relate that once there was a ship which began its journey in a very fortunate manner. The wedding guest would notice that the music had started and that most probably the bride and the minstrels had walked into the hall. He beat his breast with dismay, but could not but hear the story to its conclusion. The bride hath paced into the hall, red as a rose is she, nodding their heads before he goes, this merry minstrelsy. The wedding guest he beat his breast, yet he cannot choose but hear, and thus spake on the ancient man, the bright-eyed mariner. Now, the bride, who is as beautiful as a red rose, she enters the hall, and the happy singers they precede her, and she is taken to the church. And now the storm blast came, and he was tyrannous and strong. He struck with his overtaking wings and chased us south along. With sloping masts and dipping prow, as who pursued with yell and blow, still treads the shadow of his foe and forward bends his head. The ship drove fast, loud roared the blast, and southward aye we fled. Straightway the ancient mariner plunges into his tale, which the wedding guest now listens like a 3 years child. It is an account of the southward voyage, which the mariner, along with the 200 other sailors, had undertaken in fair weather. Unfortunately, a mighty storm overtook the ship and drove them to Antarctic, a terrible region of mist and snow. The storm was so powerful that it appeared to be a living creature that struck them with its huge wings and drove them in the southern direction. The ship fled the storm, but the storm was always at the heels of the ship. And now they came both mist and snow, and it grew wondrous cold, and ice, mast high, came floating by, as green as emerald. And through the drifts, the snowy cliffs did send a dismal sheen, nor shapes of men nor beasts we ken, the ice was all between. Additionally, the storm brought in its wake both mist and snow. The sun could only be dimly seen through the drifts of snow, and there was nothing but ice to be seen on all sides. Excuse me. For the further amazement of the ancient mariner and his crew, the ice emitted hideous noises. The ice was here, the ice was there. The ice was all around. It cracked and growled and roared and howled, like noises in a swound. At length did cross an albatross. Through the fog it came, as if it had been a Christian soul, we hailed it in God's name. When the ship rounds Cape Horn, suddenly out of fog and mist there appears an albatross, which is a large, huge seabird. The sailors began to hail the bird as if it were a Christian soul. It ate the food it never had eat, and round it flew. The ice did split with a thunder fit. The helmsman steered us through, and a good south wind sprung up behind. The albatross did follow, and every day for food or play came to the mariner's hollow. The sailors, who hailed the bird as if it was a Christian soul, offered it food and hospitality. Every day they would call out to the bird when they wanted to feed or play with it, and the bird would come happily. At night, it used to sit on the mast or on some sail of the ship. In mist or cloud, on mast or shroud, it perched for vespers 9, whilst all the night through fog smoke white glimmered the white moonshine. God save thee, ancient mariner, from the fiends that plague thee thus. Why lookest thou so? With my crossbow I shot the albatross. Now, at this stage of the narrative, before that, the bird followed the ship for 9 days, and in the meanwhile, ice split, and a favorable south wind drove them northwards in the glimmering light of the moon. And we see it's a critical stage because at this stage, the narrative, the terrified wedding guest noticed that the mariner's face had undergone an unearthly change as if he was wrenched by a sudden agony. He thought that the mariner was being tormented by some devils and prayed that he might be saved from his torture. However, the ancient mariner told him that the change in his appearance had taken place due to his remembrance of the fact that he had committed a heinous crime of shooting the albatross with his crossbow for no reason. The sun now rose upon the right. Out of the sea came he, still hid in mist, and on the left went down into the sea. And the good south wind still blew behind, but no sweet bird did follow, nor any day for food or play came to the mariner's hollow. The sun rises up out of the sea on the right side. It is still misty. The sun sets on the left into the sea again. The idea is that the ship must have doubled what we now call the Cape of Good Hope. The ship seems to have turned round somewhere near the Antarctic Circle and so came back northward. The good south wind blows still as they emerge from the ice zone. No bird appears to follow them for any food or play. No bird has heard their calls. And I had done a hellish thing. and it would work them woe. For all a word, I had killed the bird that made the breeze to blow. Ah, wretch, said they, the bird to slay, that made the breeze to blow. Nor dim nor red like God's own head, the glorious sun oppressed. Then all a word, I had killed the bird that brought the fog and mist. 'Twas right, said they, such birds to slay that bring the fog and mist. In this part of the poem, we see the ancient mariner related that at first his companions on the ship criticized his killing of the bird. They said he had done a wretched thing by killing this bird because they thought it was responsible for the favorable wind which had sprung up. However, after some time, when the fog and the mist cleared, they adopted the view that it was a bird of ill omen, and the ancient mariner had done the right thing by killing it. Thus, unknowingly, they had become sharers in the crime of the ancient mariner. The fair breeze blew, the white foam flew, the furrow followed free. We were the first that ever burst into that silent sea. Down dropped the breeze, the sails dropped down. It was sad as could be, and we did speak only to break the silence of the sea. All of a sudden, the favorable wind dropped, and the sails hung limply in the calm sea. It was so silent all around that they spoke merely to break the frightening silence. All in a hot and copper sky, the bloody sun at noon, right up above the mast did stand no bigger than the moon. Day after day, we stuck, nor breath nor motion, as idle as painted ship upon a painted ocean. Later, it became unbearably hot, with the sky burning like copper. The ship was absolutely becalmed, and it appeared just like the picture of a ship in the ocean. Water, water everywhere, and all the boards did shrink. Water, water everywhere, nor any drop to drink. The very deep did rot, O Christ, that ever this should be. Your slimy things did crawl with legs upon the slimy sea. The torture owing to the killing of the bird begins. Added to the heat is thirst. There is water everywhere, yet it is not for drinking. The ocean putrefies. All praise to Christ, but the mariner believes that he must suffer first before he can pray. All around we see dirty looking creatures. They appear dead and dirty. About in reel and rout, the dead fires danced at night. The water, like a witch's oils, burned green and blue and white. And some in dreams assured were of the spirit that plagued us so. 9 fathom deep he had followed us from the land of mist and snow. It is a picture of horror because there is great faintness and confusion. Death fires seem to anticipate calamity. The ancient mariner sees different lights, green and white. The sailors were filled with loathing and horror. Even some of them were assured in their dreams that the polar spirit is plaguing them for killing the harmless albatross. It had followed the ship merely to avenge the death of the innocent bird. Also, it was the spirit that made the ship become becalmed, and every tongue through utter drought was withered at the root. We could not speak, no more than if we had been choked with soot. Ah, well a day! What evil looks had I from old and young! Instead of the cross, the albatross about my neck was hung. Due to extreme heat, their throats became parched with thirst and their tongues became dry. And the boards of the ship also began to shrink. The sailors held the ancient mariner to blame and they fixed the guilt symbolically on him by tying the dead body of the albatross around his neck. These are the two parts, and we shall continue reading other parts in the next video.